Thank you so much for obviously finding this time to join me on this call. What I usually try to do is I organize these kind of conversations with industry leaders, people who are, I think, doing the most in different sectors of the economy. My interest really is in clean energy technologies, climate investments, as well as critical minerals. And the reason, obviously, behind that is that pretty much resonates with what my background has been, especially as a professional. I've spent most of my time working in mining. I've worked for the financial services sector, and now I'm working for a company that's recycling lithium ion batteries. And it's through these conversations, obviously, that we get the word out there to the market in terms of the latest developments in the market, and also just use this platform as a way of identifying risks that may pose a threat to us attaining all these clean energy goals and potentially also find solutions. So in the past, I've had conversations with people who are specifically into clean energy technologies, people who are in mining, to mention just but a few. But as I was doing that, obviously, one big concern came up, which is human capital development. A lot of concerns have been raised regarding whether we are developing the right talent, developing a pipeline of critical labor that is going to help us scale some of these technologies and also just advance our clean energy goals. So I figured maybe I could host you today, especially that I think you've done a lot of work in this space. And I'm hoping, obviously, at the end of the conversation, we're going to have a few pointers in terms of how we can close the gap and how we can keep scaling going forward. So, welcome and thank you so much. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Jacob.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. So, before we kickstart the conversation, do you mind just giving my listeners a brief background in terms of who you are, what you've been doing in the last 5, 10 years?
Sure, no problem. First and foremost, I am a father of 7 children, 3 boys, 4 girls, been married to the same woman for 36 years. And that's kind of a big project we've had for quite some time. Um, from a work standpoint, just quickly, I started out life as an art major, very interested in the arts and music, and shifted that to a marketing degree for undergraduate, and finished with a graduate degree in instructional technology. So across the years of my career, I've put those two things together in the creative and the instructional mode to, in the instances where training can get boring, we throw in some spice with marketing to get their attention. And then where marketing doesn't hold the retention of what the product is, we throw in some instructional design and adult learning theory so that people will pay attention and remember what the product is that they're selling. Um, so I've worked for small companies and large companies, from 10 people to where I am now, it's 4,500 people. And across all that time, also had the great privilege of being an entrepreneur for 12 years and enjoying a stretch of owning my own business and enjoying that, we'll call it freedom. Stress, different kind of stress than the corporate world, but enjoyable all as well. The last 6.5 years, I've been working for Panasonic Energy of North America. Started there as the talent development manager. I was promoted into the director of talent development as well as high performance culture. Developed a culture program to bring our company together and seeing along the same lines as behaviors and activities and things along those lines to create a culture of belonging. And just most recently in June, shifted over to managing our Plum office and our community and workforce development, creating upskilling programs and shifting some things which kind of some of the stuff we'll talk about is those gaps and those opportunities to be where we want to be and where we need to be to create that forever pipeline of individuals wanting to come and work for us.
That's a very good and rich background. Obviously, thank you so much for sharing that. I did get an opportunity of looking through your profile, and I must say you've done some amazing work in your career. Obviously, not just in the entrepreneurial space, but obviously also in the clean energy space. But what I wanted to first start with is some sort of an understanding in terms of where we are coming from regarding clean energy jobs. We've done a lot of transition over the last few years, and when this conversation started around moving from not so clean energy sources to clean energy sources, obviously there was a need for us to start mobilizing this critical labor to start filling in some of these gaps and some of these roles. How has the situation been like from where we're coming from, where we are now, and how do you see the labor market going forward?
So from where we were with just everything being petroleum based and those types of things, and to where we are now, there's been a lot of work on the mind shift, right? It's understanding and in some cases fighting against the concepts that people don't understand, global warming or pollution to our earth and the problems that are going on there. Any kind of energy that we create has the potential to be destructive at the same time. And one of the first things I thought about when Panasonic asked me to join them was, what are we doing for the end of life product? What do we do? Are we just going to end up with a pile of these batteries in landfills instead of the oil issues and those kind of things? And we were on several committees trying to figure out what is that pathway, what do we need to do, and then Redwood showed up and a few others started showing up and going, awesome, this helps that whole argument about what's the difference, right? So education and understanding of how we truly are changing the world to be cleaner, and even though it takes certain energies to create the clean energy, the numbers show that it's way less of an issue than if we stay on the petroleum path where everything is petroleum. We're always going to need some of everything, but to reduce the impact that we have on the world is a significant thing, which will help life for our children and grandchildren and so forth. So
yeah, that's very true. Carry on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as far as the jobs go, it's the same kind of situation. It's that understanding what is that gap between working in the automotive industry then and the automotive industry now, and what are the differences that are needed? Is that skills gap so big we're going to have to do a whole bunch of training to change that? Or are those skills very similar with little tweaks to understanding the differences? And I think where we are right now, when you look at Panasonic, though I'm not speaking to you today on behalf of them, I have the experience working with them to see that we've been able to take individuals off the street who've been working in service industries and otherwise and teach them and train them on how to use these machines, how the process flows, what's important for quality, what's important for safety, and upskill these folks from serving dinners to creating EV batteries.
That's so interesting. So when I was reviewing some of the current figures, one thing that caught my attention was the fact that clean energy jobs, not just in the US, but I think globally as well, they've been on a rise. Talking of the US alone, I think around 2023, we saw an increase of almost like 5% in terms of just the number of jobs that were created. And comparing that to the rest of the economy, which only grew at around, I think, 2%, 3%, somewhere around there, it appears that there's a lot of work that's being done in terms of just creating all these roles, be it in manufacturing, be it in processing, be it in construction, and many other areas of the equation. But from your perspective, Todd, we are creating all these jobs, and I think there's also a projection that by 2030 we are supposed to create, I think, around 1.3 million jobs or so. How are we balancing that with attracting the right talent into these specific roles? Because from where I'm seated, I think I see a mismatch. We are creating a lot of jobs, but we still seem to have a very low number of people going into this part of the sector, and people who are available to actually fill up these roles. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that's a key thing to recognize. We have, the Upjohn organization says by 2030, just in the battery industry alone, there's going to be an increase of 310,000 jobs. That's quite a few roles. The interesting thing about that is they estimate that mostly about 70% of those needed jobs are going to be non-college degree related, whereas only about 30% of those require a bachelor's degree. So we've pushed and pushed for years and years and years. Hey, kids, get your college education, get your college education. And, I remember one time in Georgia, I was in the men's room washing my hands, and this guy comes in extremely exasperated. I'm like, hey, sounds like you're having a rough day. And he's like, yeah, I just finished my master's degree in HR, and I'm driving a stinking cement truck. I thought
That's
that would be frustrating. And so we do have to look at how do we change that mindset to say, look, there are very nicely paying jobs in this sector. You don't have to go to school for 4 years to get these jobs. You can get certificates. We can use our apprenticeship programs that we're doing with local community colleges. We can gear the subject matter directly to what you need and what we need. And then if we're doing it right, we create a career development path for these individuals to say, okay, I didn't get my college degree, but how do I continue to grow? How do I continue to develop? How do I grow within this industry and keep moving up and being able to increase my lifestyle and income, as well as the enjoyment of doing the job that I do? So there's planning in there that we've got to take, a really hard look at and say, how do we get that mindset to shift and say, I'm excited to go work in these hands-on roles that really do change the world.
Absolutely. And as you were going through that explanation, just a thought crossed my mind. So in generic terms, we've been talking about this labor shortage, but I would be interested to understand exactly where this shortage is. Is it at a lower level, talking of operators, mechanics, electricians? Or is it mid level management, or is it senior management? Where exactly is the largest gap in terms of the workforce?
Yeah, I can give you my opinion on that. I don't know the official statistics on it. It seems that from my experience and what I see is that there are numbers available, but the issue, at least in things that I see, is are we setting people up to succeed well enough? Take, for example, Tesla, Redwood, Panasonic, Lighten, any of these large manufacturing or recycling companies. And we need people, right? We need a lot of people. And when they come in, if we don't do the right thing to set the stage where they come in to this massive environment and they feel confident and safe and like they know what they're doing, then they're going step into this 5.3 million square foot facility and go, holy cow, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
This is huge. And then I gotta gown up. I gotta put on all this PPE. I've got to cover my eyes, cover my head, cover my feet, cover my hands, cover my body, and then work for 12 hours. And so if we haven't set them up in a way that says, hey, this is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And with our shift schedule, you only work 150 days a year. Think about how you can utilize the rest of your time, and you still get paid full time across the year and make really decent money. So I see a lot of preparation there. And the other side of things that I think companies really need to pay attention to, which in the manufacturing world, from what I see, and in my opinion, what happens is we've got people who have been in the manufacturing industry for a long time. They know how to make things, they know how to produce. Somewhere along that path, many of them haven't had the same time put towards teaching them how to be a leader of people. So when we have leaders who are focused solely on numbers and production output and aren't thinking about how do I help my individuals and my team feel valued? How do I tap into their experience? How do I tap into their innovative ideas? How do I tap into the human element of those people to make them want to be with me and stay with my team? How do I get them to say, I can't wait to go to work this morning instead of, I have to work tomorrow? So there's elements from that leadership side that we've got to shift a bit from command and control to hit the numbers, to inspire and motivate to hit those numbers. Because we have, when I'm out on the floor, there's people who stop and say, hey, I have this idea. How we could make this process better if we do this or we do that. Now, you got to balance that because there's a lot of people with a lot of ideas. And there's also a lot of experts that have put those machines together and those processes together, and they've done the numbers and they say this is the best way. But if that employee has an avenue to say, I think this might work, we need a way to take that into consideration and see if we can't change if it's a better way.
I agree with you totally. It's a question of continuous improvement, giving employees the opportunity to grow in their roles, but obviously getting feedback as well in terms of how these processes can be improved and just how generally we can make our workplace more enjoyable in terms of retaining talent. That for me, I think is a very big thing, because when you are working in an environment that is not so familiar, and I mean battery technology, manufacturing, all these are new concepts which people are not so used to. So sometimes the levels of frustration are quite high. And to your point, we just need to continue making sure that we're creating an environment where people can feel welcome, where people can feel like they're growing in their career, and where people can feel that they have something to contribute to the general energy fight or clean energy transition and things like that. But one other thing that I wanted to get some feedback from you was on how we are doing in terms of just migrating talent from other not so clean industries that we are running away from. I know for a fact that from the time when these conversations started, there's been a slowdown, for instance, in coal production, coal mining, and other sectors of the economy that are being regarded as not conducive in terms of us transitioning into the clean energy space. A lot of jobs have been lost. Those, for me, those are like low-hanging fruits in terms of acquiring quick labor into the clean energy industry. What is it that we should be doing as we are decommissioning these unclean energy sources, these unclean industries, and how can we effectively migrate that talent into the clean energy space?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is low hanging fruit. And depending on, I see the recycling zone, one of those that may may have more upskilling needed because there's such a safety issue there and an understanding of how those processes go. I might be a little ignorant on how that recycling process takes place, but I think you're right from that low hanging fruit standpoint. Anybody that's been in those uh, mining industries or other, I think the ability to upskill is is quite easy. I use the term easy. It's all perspective, right? But if you've been working in the automotive industry, if you've been working in any manufacturing or mining, that transfer of skills, I think, would actually be even easier than coming from a service type industry because
Mhm.
you're already working around heavy machinery, you're already working around industrial type circumstances. We at Panasonic, it's a clean room environment. So that's a little bit different than a mining or automotive operation, but really just small things that are different. So I think talent acquisition has an opportunity, especially for keeping up on the news of locations that are losing jobs and putting out campaigns to say, we need you, come to Nevada. We need you, come to Kansas. We need you, come to wherever these new manufacturing plants are coming in, and those opportunities are there.
Excellent. And I think to your point, that's pretty much what we need to continue doing. And on the back of that, the other gap that I've also noticed is how these clean energy companies can work with the communities in terms of just spreading the word, creating a lot of hype around clean energy jobs, developing, I think, programs with the likes of community colleges to make sure that there's a lot of interest that's flowing through high school, going into these tertiary institutions, and many other things. From your experience, I know there's a lot that's being done on the back of this. Just quite recently, I think the U.S. government allocated a lot of funding to stimulate interest in mining disciplines across different universities, but there seemed to be very little that's being done at community college level. Are there any quick suggestions that you can offer in terms of how companies can work together with their respective communities in terms of just growing the interest in clean energy jobs?
Yeah, I run the risk of giving away all my secrets if I tell you that. Now,
And I apologize for putting you on the spot.
now there's plenty to go around, right? Um, I've been totally just amazed at the ability for here in Northern Nevada, the combination of government, industry, and education working together to create programs. And that's what I've been deeply involved with over the past several months. We work very closely with TMCC. We're putting together a new program for us, which front loads our training so that our people hit the floor much more confident, much safer, being more productive right from the start than just doing total on the job training. We're trying to put that knowledge up front, which saves us a whole lot of headache on the other side. And we're putting together other programs. TMCC and others have been very helpful. There's also other programs that we're trying to emphasize, starting to get in as early as elementary school and getting the interest. I remember as a kid sitting there in sixth grade and we hear this saxophone coming down the hallway. What the heck is that? Just blasting out the Pink Panther theme. Mm-hmm. They come into our classroom and this guy comes in, finishes the song up, and we're all mesmerized, right? And I ran home and I said, Mom, I got to play the saxophone.
Uh-huh.
I did that till Mary had a little lamb and I switched to drums. But it excited me and it stuck in my mind. I said, wow, that's something I want to do, something exciting. And if we can start that young and say, there's a pathway, you can stay in your hometown if you want, you can make a good living, you can have highly technical jobs and enjoyable career development and stay where you want to stay. And we've got to do that to create that forever pipeline. We've got to do it in a way that makes our people our competitive advantage. Not just our product, but our people is that competitive advantage that they want to stay with us, they want to grow with us. So building in the apprenticeship programs that we have, building in our upskilling programs for those who are already working for us, building in that connection with, for example, I spoke with the director at the first organization yesterday. They have the robotics programs. I volunteered for one of those a couple of weeks ago. And you got these kids from high school and junior high, smarter than smart, and some of them don't want to go to college. So I want those people coming over to my company and putting that knowledge to work right off the bat. And if we can create those alliances with different programs throughout the community, it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, yesterday, was it yesterday or the other day? I was chatting with a friend of mine, my workmate. He's a chemical engineer. So I was just trying to get some insights from him in terms of how his training prepared him for all these roles that he's had in the battery sector. And one of the things that he mentioned was that sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of how the curriculum in university looks like compared to what the actual job entails on the ground. And it's those small gaps that I think we need to start filling in. And with regards to that, do you think companies playing a leading role in terms of developing these curriculums at universities, at colleges, will be more effective in terms of not just designing the programs, but also preparing people for these industry roles?
Yeah, I think so. Also remember Department of Energy, Department of Labor, others, and Department of Defense are all working together to create curriculum across the country. They've tapped into large organizations like Panasonic, Tesla, Redwood, and others to get advice and input on what that curriculum can be. So that curriculum is going to be made available to organizations as well as community colleges to try and gear up as quick as possible. When we talk about these jobs being needed by 2030, I mean, we just hit 2025.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of upskilling in the next 5 years. And so those things definitely need to be in place. We're in an advantage from Panasonic side that we've kind of gone through the pains and growing pains of figuring out how to teach people what they need to do. But there's so many different areas that we can all continue to improve in and make that better, and where we can contribute across the country. We've been giving whatever information we can to help that program.
Excellent. That's so nice to hear. Looks like there's a lot of things that are happening in the background regarding just preparing everyone for 2030 and closing all these human capital development gaps that we keep identifying along the way. And in closing, I just wanted to get your perspective. Are there any concerns that you may have regarding the pace at which we are moving in terms of creating all these pipelines of critical labor? And if so, how do you see us moving into 2030? Is it something that should concern, or is it something that we should really be concerned about, or we are making good progress in terms of covering ground?
Well, I think we need to make more progress. From a minerals standpoint, earth minerals, everybody knows we're way, way behind on that. And we're behind in most everything when it comes to EV and battery production as a country. So regardless of political viewpoints and all those other things, I think we'd be crazy to slow down. Those things are needed. I don't think we're going to make a giant reversal and say, forget about EVs and things like that. I think we're going to make smarter moves and figure out things, but we got to keep plowing forward as fast as we can so that we can realize that opportunity for cleaner energy and more efficient energy. So yeah, keep moving forward.
Interesting. And lastly, I promise I'm not going to put you on the spot, but this is just a question that I wanted to ask. We've been reading in the papers all these bans that China has been placing on the US. Obviously, they've banned critical minerals. And one thing that's concerning for me is the fact that China seems to house or control most of the processing, manufacturing of semiconductors, chips, and many other products that are critical for this energy transition. Now, the fact that they are placing all these bans, what that means is that we need to continue creating internal capacity, especially in the US, in areas around manufacturing, in areas around having the right technologies. And that is going to require skilled manpower, of course. So China is doing all these things. Are there any interim steps that we can take to make sure that we cushion the effect, especially from the labor side?
Yeah, I honestly don't know the answers to those questions as far as I do trust that there's a lot going on that I'm not aware of and not smart enough to know how to answer those. But I know there's stuff in the works, and you'd have to ask some higher ups to get that answer from my perspective.
No, thank you so much, Todd. Again, I do appreciate your time. It's not every day that you reach out to people and they create time to join you on a podcast like this one. I highly do value the conversation that we've just had. It's so eye-opening. And it's so interesting just to get perspectives from industry experts regarding what we're doing, where we're going, and many other things. And I do believe that even my listeners, I think, are going to benefit from this knowledge that you've shared. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate. I look forward to having you around in the future as and when your schedule allows.
I appreciate that and hope anything I've said has been helpful and not hurtful. And
No,
let's keep in touch, Jacob. Thank you.
thank you so much, Todd. You have a lovely weekend.
You too.